All right, folks, we are talking all about nutrition today. We're talking about how important it is to dial in nutrition in order to prevent disease. We're talking about how it impacts the lives of your children and how you can talk to them about healthy nutrition. And we're talking about steps to change in order to go from a camp of not doing much to having a lifestyle where you're moving daily in your nutrition. Today's guest is Dr. Ritu Sharma, and she's a double board certified physician in emergency medicine and in lifestyle medicine. And she's the founder of Head, Heart, Hands, which is a holistic wellness program for individuals and for organizations. It's amazing. She's gone into organizations, taught them some of the basic principles of healthy nutrition and how to approach nutrition, and seen whole communities begin to shift and change. After years of practicing emergency medicine right on the front lines and seeing patients suffer with diseases that could have been prevented, Dr. Ritu has created her Head, Heart, and Hands to help people prevent and reverse chronic conditions. She is here to help us enhance our quality of life. Let's welcome Dr. Sharma to the podcast. Dr. Sharma, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. I am thrilled to be able to chat with you a lot about how we look at nutrition and wellness and that lifestyle prevention, especially with our children. So thanks for being a guest here today.
Oh, I'm so happy to be a guest. Thanks so much for inviting me.
So you started your whole career in the ER room. You spent many years there, but as you started to see, I'm sure what was looked like patterns coming into the ER, you segued from being an ER doc into lifestyle medicine. And I'd love to hear a little bit about that transition and what you saw in the ER that made you want to move into this other field.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been an ER doctor for over 20 years. And, throughout my career, being on the front lines of our healthcare system, I've seen people coming in with many diseases that are preventable and potentially even reversible. But most people don't get the help to prevent and reverse disease from our healthcare system because our healthcare system isn't really set up that way. So about 5 years ago, I got a second board certification in something called lifestyle medicine, which focuses on disease prevention and reversal. And so taking, for example, conditions like high blood pressure and high cholesterol and type 2 diabetes that are often preventable and often even reversible. And rather than managing those conditions, helping people to prevent and reverse it. So it's really a different way of looking at health. And yeah, so I started working with adults, helping people to lower their blood pressures and lower their cholesterol and reverse their type 2 diabetes and come off of medications. But all of that, I was still working in the emergency room. So I feel like doing both, so working in the ER and doing this work, I think kind of fits hand in hand because working in the ER fuels my fire. I mean, every single shift when I go to work, I see patients that need this help and
Mm.
they're not sadly getting this help from our healthcare system. So really, I've been doing both for the past 5 years, and it's been pretty amazing.
hmm the name of my company is Move Daily Fitness. What does it look like for you in your work to help people move daily? What are you helping them move daily in?
So lifestyle medicine focuses on 6 pillars, and I think making positive changes or positive improvements, even just small wins in each of
hmm
those pillars can make a big difference. So the 6 pillars are what we eat, our physical activity, so moving more, and then sleep, so improving both the quality and quantity of our sleep, better managing stress, so kind of looking at our life holistically and trying to reduce stress, but understanding that stress is inevitable. And so then learning how to better manage stress, and then relationships. So that sometimes is surprising to people. That's one of the pillars, but our relationships are fundamental to our physical health and our mental health, and are actually one of the biggest drivers of longevity. So really prioritizing relationships. And then the 6th pillar is reducing risky substances. So that means drinking alcohol only in moderation or not at all, not smoking, and not using drugs. So if you're making positive steps forward, even small steps in each of those pillars that can help you to really change your quality of life, increase your energy, boost your mood, really feel better, but then also have these changes in your biometrics like your blood pressure and your blood sugars and your cholesterol and your the numbers on the scale. So all of those things it can make a difference.
Hmm. Yeah, and it doesn't have to be a lot. I think sometimes we think it's like an all or nothing thing, but it's the dripping water on the stone that hollows it out, not through force, but through persistence, right? Like all of those little steps can help move the needle toward better health. But people can get overwhelmed. Like I think we hear about these things. We know that we should be doing them, and yet you still see people in the ER who have paid attention to none of it. Why is that the case? Like, why are we in this environment right now that doesn't prioritize these movements, this holistic approach?
Well, I think there's so many reasons. And I honestly, I think our system is setting us up to fail. Our food system is setting us up to fail. Our our diet culture is setting us up to fail. And the fact that I think the mindset that many people have that we're taught about food and health is so restrictive, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so I think that when many people they equate health with numbers on a scale, and they equate getting healthier as not being able to live the way that they want to live or
Yeah,
feeling
yeah,
restricted, right?
right.
And I think so, in addition to helping people understand the root causes of their problems. Like, I teach people about insulin resistance and inflammation and gut health and how to harness those root causes of our health to really change the trajectory of their health. But so much of it is also mindset, really changing the way people feel about their bodies, not equating numbers on a scale to health because it's not the same thing, changing the way people think about food. Um, and so that, I think that can be life changing, not looking at food like calories or carbs or something that's going to make you gain weight, but thinking about food as our most powerful medicine and really learning how to harness that power to change your life. And then I think also you can understand all of that. So my program, it's called Head, Heart, Hands. So head is learning and mindset. So really like teaching people all of those things that I talked about root causes that we don't typically address in our healthcare system properly, or we don't talk about enough in our healthcare system, like reversing insulin resistance, changing our mindset about food and health. But then also, in order to make change, there's more involved. So it's head, heart, hands. That's the head. The heart is reinforcement and hope. Like we are never really told that our bodies are powerful and miraculous and often capable of healing themselves. That's not a
Mm,
message that
sure.
we hear from our healthcare system very often.
Hmm.
But I think if we understand and internalize that message that we have that power, that can be life changing. So that's kind of the heart is the coaching and reinforcement. And then the hands, realistically, we need the tools in order to make those changes. And so our food system makes it really difficult for us. And so, in order, you can have the best intentions and you can have the best mindset, but unless you actually know what to make for dinner because you work and you are busy and your kids may not eat everything and you can't make four different meals for four different people in your family, unless you actually have the tools to make those changes, it's really hard. And so
Yeah.
that's I think why it's hard for people and what I'm trying to do to make it easier is to provide all of those things, the head, the heart, the hands, the tools to actually make those changes.
Hmm. I'd love to talk a little bit about this food system. Like, why is it so broken? What has happened? And then, obviously we're all in the middle of it. We're experiencing it every time we walk to the grocery store, every time we scroll on social media, like we're being inundated with the message from a broken food system. So, what does one do about that then?
Oh gosh. I mean, it's awful. It's really, it makes it really difficult. But I
Hmm.
do think knowledge is power. Applied knowledge is power, and that's kind of what drives me is, once we recognize that and really can have the knowledge and the tools to save ourselves from it, that's really what we can do. And then on the bigger picture, then, I'm trying to advocate for change.
Yeah.
And, I think hopefully that will happen. But in the meantime, then what we need to do is empower ourselves with the knowledge, with, ideas of what we can make, what we can do, you know, um, creating habits that'll make it easier.
Hmm. Yeah, because we automate our behaviors, don't we? We get so used to driving through the drive-through, eating in the car, coming home, not prepping food, not having those healthy options available, just having those go-tos, grab and go from the pantry. So it's not easy to move into a healthy pattern of behavior, but of course it is possible. We know we should. So okay, so we have a system that's broken. Yeah, what are some of the things that we can begin to do on a daily basis to shift that for ourselves and for our families and for our children or grandchildren?
So I think what you're saying, like moving daily, I mean, that is a fundamental piece. But even making small positive changes to our diet is I mean, that's a huge thing that we can do. I always think about diet as like, what we eat is so powerful and actually
Mm,
has the potential to really change our life in a really short amount of time. So my program is 12 weeks, and even in 12 weeks, it's not a diet, it's a lifestyle. So making sustainable changes. But even in 12 weeks, you can really notice significant changes by making, and it doesn't have to be like dramatic, that you change everything, but making positive changes. So eating more whole foods, um, while you crowd out the processed foods, eating more plants, just even small changes of on your plate where, maybe your portion sizes, you have more of the vegetables and fruits, and you crowd out a little bit less, you have a little bit less room for the other stuff. Just small changes like that can really make a big difference.
hmm.
Um, and then I think, again, it starts with empowerment. I feel like for me, and I'm a physician. Thought I mean, obviously I know a lot about health. I was like trained, I did a lot of school, but there was so much that I didn't know. So when I studied lifestyle medicine 5 years ago, it was really eye-opening to me because I felt like, gosh, there's so much about nutrition and about health and about root causes that I actually don't know anything about. And if I am a physician and I don't know this, then how do my patients
Right.
know this, right? Like
Yeah.
like this is something that we're just not taught. We're not taught about nutrition enough when we're in school. We're not taught about how to harness the power of food to like make us feel better. So I think empowering ourselves, and then for me, I think, and this really drives me now, is empowering our kids
Yeah.
because I feel like when we start young, it can really change the trajectory of your life. And I know that for me, like I started learning about all this stuff in my 40s. But, for my kids, I've really taught them so much about nutrition. And it's not, we don't talk about food as calories or carbs, and we don't talk about it in the context of weight, numbers on a scale. It's more just empowerment.
Yeah.
And so they understand a lot of the concepts that I didn't really understand until, I'm in my 40s, but about gut health and about the gut brain connection and about even, metabolic health to some degree. And so then when you start understanding food at a deeper level, even when you're young and you have a positive relationship with food, I think it really can change your life.
Hmm. I grew up, or yeah, I guess we grew up pretty healthy in my household. My mom, we had the odd canned vegetables like canned beans, but most of it was fresh. We did have the odd canned mushroom soup or tomato soup on a Sunday with grilled cheese sandwich. But aside from that, she did her best. My mom did really well to provide that variety and diversity. I, of course, ramped it up another notch for my family and started hiding vegetables and beans in brownies and you know my kids like laugh about it today, but it was a bit of a bait and switch for them from time to
Uh-huh.
time. But I felt totally fine doing that, hiding vegetables in sauces and soups and pureeing that and all those sorts of things. But so I feel like my kids have a good, foundation. And even though in their teens, like a lot of teens, sort of go into the fast food and into the processed foods because that's what's around, and they go to friends' houses and that's what's around. But it's interesting because as adults, they've all come back to really craving healthy foods and knowing that it makes their body feel better, like without a shadow of doubt. And we have members who will chime in and say, oh my goodness, like we're hosting a challenge right now, a 30 solid challenge, where we're encouraging the women to, for 30 solid days, really dial in habits of whole foods, prioritizing protein and fiber on their plates, and so on and so forth. And they're all like, I feel so much better. I feel so much better. And so you talk about some of these root causes, and taking a look at that. No doubt you saw a ton of preventable conditions when you're in the ER doing your work there. So, how can we, first, I guess I would like to hear what are some of those preventable conditions, and how can we go back to the root cause and begin to address that?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So it's estimated that about 80% of our most common chronic diseases are preventable. Um,
80, that is
80,
huge. Yeah, that's
80%.
huge.
And then so many of them are reversible. So conditions like high blood pressure or high cholesterol or type 2 diabetes, or even, believe it or not, heart disease to some
Yeah,
degree. There have been studies that heart disease is potentially reversible to some degree. And that's not something that we talk about in our healthcare system, which, again, that's one of the things that drives me because um, heart disease is our number one cause of death. So, heart disease is number one, strokes are number two, and both fall under the umbrella of cardiovascular disease. And there have been studies that show, I mean, well, we know that heart disease can be preventable to some degree for many people, right? So it's not all genetics, much of it is lifestyle factors. But then also these studies, and they're small because these types of studies are not funded the same way that drug studies are funded, but there have been a few studies that suggest that heart disease can be reversible to some degree, where people have
mhm,
changed their diet and lifestyle.
yeah.
And in 36 months, they've had, a cardiac catheterization, and then 36 months later, they have another procedure where they look at their vessels to see if their blockages, and actually that the blockages have improved. Or
Wow.
people that have needed surgery, or that, have end stage heart disease, and that they've changed their lifestyle and it's made a difference in their life. And I feel like, gosh, like everyone should know that.
Yeah.
Everyone with heart disease should know that. Everyone who has a family member or friend with heart disease should know that, which means everyone should know that because
Right,
that's
right.
like it
That's
affects everyone,
everyone.
right? And
Yeah.
and that doesn't mean that everyone has to make lifestyle changes. I think everyone is capable of making decisions for themselves of how they want to live. I'm not trying to force anyone to make decisions, but everyone should at least know that that may be possible so they can make that decision for themselves, right? And that's what I think is so important with lifestyle medicine. It's just empowering people with the knowledge, and then you can make the decisions for yourself. Like you have a roadmap of how to reverse your type 2 diabetes, or how to lower your blood pressure, or how to reverse your cholesterol so you can come off of cholesterol medicine. If you have that roadmap and the tools and that help, and then you can choose whether you want to follow that or not, but everyone should at least have that, I think, so they can make that decision.
Hmm. Many of the women listening right now are on the verge of getting diabetes. Maybe they're insulin resistant. Could you talk to us about exactly what that is? Maybe what's the root cause and how can we prevent that from going any further? Because that, I mean, people may not think that's a scary one, but that is a scary one. You do not want that. And because there are so many lifestyle things that we can do, I'd love for you to just drive that one home for us so that we are empowered with the knowledge so that we can prevent it for ourselves.
Absolutely. So insulin resistance is one of the things that I'm super passionate about. So diabetes runs in my family. So, on both sides, I have a
Mhm.
genetic predisposition for diabetes, right?
Mhm.
And so for me personally, this is a really important issue because I don't want to be diabetic. And I know actually, after all that I've learned, now I've realized that I was actually headed in that direction. I was actually really close, kind of getting close there. And so insulin resistance is the root cause of type 2 diabetes and prediabetes, but it's also a driver of many of our other most common diseases, which I think is not something that we talk about enough. So insulin resistance, it drives high blood pressure.
Mhm.
It drives high cholesterol. It actually has an effect on our brain health. So some people are calling um, Alzheimer's dementia type 3 diabetes because
Right.
there's likely a link there. And then resistance also has a big impact on our brain health. Like it can impact our risk of depression. So people with insulin resistance have double the risk of major depression.
Mm.
So insulin resistance is a big deal, but the reality is it can be prevented and often even reversed. So again, unfortunately, it's not as simple as when we go on social media, there's a lot of people that they just say like, "Oh, don't eat sugar, don't eat carbs," and that's how you reverse insulin resistance. And I think that a lot of the nutrition information that we get through social media or online is very simplified, and it's not there's a lot more nuance there. So it's
Mhm.
not just sugar and carbs that causes insulin resistance. There's actually a lot of underlying root causes. So our gut health has a big impact. Inflammation, so when we have an inflammatory diet or when we have a lot of inflammation in our body, that can affect our cells and their ability to utilize insulin. And so there's a lot of factors, but I think, some of the things that we can do, we can make positive diet changes. So again, eating more whole foods, eating more plants, eating an anti-inflammatory diet, really not cutting out entire food groups, but making sure that when we're eating carbohydrates, we're eating beans, lentils, we're eating whole grains, and then also there's the category of whole grains. There's some nuance there too because some whole grains are more processed than others. So things
Yeah.
like steel cut oats, which is a whole grain, that's going to be less processed than a whole
A quick
grain
quick oat or
cereal.
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, or even like, puffed brown rice or something, or a cereal made with whole grains, or a whole grain bread that's made with
Mhm.
whole grain flour that's processed more. So, I mean, I think that there's a lot of nuance there. And then the reality is, you know, exercise has a big impact on insulin resistance. So, when we exercise, that actually immediately has an effect on our cells and allows our cells to better utilize glucose and insulin. And then sleep and stress, they have a big impact. So all of these things together can really make a big impact. But the good thing is by making positive changes, you can see changes in this actually quite quickly. I
Mm.
mean, there are people that I've seen that have in 12 weeks had dramatic improvements in their blood sugars and in multiple biomarkers that would suggest that their insulin resistance has improved. Because again, it's not just our blood sugars, our cholesterol is impacted, so and our blood pressure, all of those can be markers of insulin resistance.
You know what's interesting is like I live my life eating healthy foods, moving daily. Like that's just how I have for the better part of 25 years. So it feels like old nature. It's good. And I do not feel restricted either. Like,
Mhm.
sometimes my mom would say to me, "Do your clients actually know what you eat?" Like as I'm having a piece of chocolate cake or whatever. I'm like, the thing is, I move my body enough, using big muscle groups and being mindful of intake, trying to honor my body, listening to my hunger and satiety levels enough that, you can have your cake and eat it too, in a sense. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I don't ever feel like I'm restricted, but I think a lot of people will listen to this maybe and go, well, I have to change everything. I have to go on a diet in order to prevent. And so there is this group of people that really, maybe it's a lack of education, but they're definitely not in the camp where they have these lifestyle habits so that it enables them to, yes, work out and go to an all-inclusive and enjoy their time there and have something at Christmas. Do you know what I mean? Like there's sometimes I think it's an all or nothing mindset, and there's a camp of people who are in the all and then or the nothing, right? What do you have to say about that? Like, how do you encourage people to shift slowly over time so that they do so in a sustainable way for the long haul? Like, I feel like you're probably in that camp, like you're doing this for life now. I'm in that camp.
Yeah.
How do people who aren't in that camp begin to get into the camp?
I think just personally, I was not always in this camp. I mean,
Mm,
I would say like,
yeah.
I did not grow up eating the healthiest food. And for many years, I thought I was eating healthy. But now when I really look back, and I did suffer with some medical problems. Like that's actually what got me into this when I started looking into lifestyle medicine and doing functional medicine coursework, it was because I was actually having medical problems and I was not feeling well and I was not understanding why I wasn't feeling well. And I wasn't getting any help from our medical system because it was like my numbers were okay, why am I not feeling well? All of that to say is I've not always been like this.
Mm,
This is something that I have actually significantly changed my diet and lifestyle and my family's diet and lifestyle in the past 5 years. And it has been very well, first of all, I guess when I learned all of this and when I started studying this, it was highly motivating to me. So I did make a lot of changes, but not because I felt like I needed to go on a diet, is because I was so inspired of how much what I could do to change kind of the way that I was feeling. And so that
mm.
actually was what drove me um, to make these changes. But I think, like, again, it's every day I feel like I am making more positive changes and doing things better. And my life is not perfect. And I don't expect anyone's life to be perfect because it's not easy. But I think if you are at least heading in that direction and making these changes, it's amazing actually how powerful it can be. And so for a lot of the people that I've worked with, I initially started working with individuals, helping people to feel better and come off of medications. But I quickly found that there was only really a small demographic that could really access that type of help, honestly, with seeing, because these types of services like are not covered in our medical system to,
Mhm.
to see people one-on-one. And so I started doing corporate wellness, so helping groups of individuals, because I felt like all of my patients need this help, right? And so I've worked with construction companies, I've worked with school systems, I've worked with IT companies, and helping people of all demographics and age levels and make positive changes. So many of the people who've gone through my program, they have really started out similar to what you're saying, like that their lifestyle was really different than what I'm advocating, right? And I think it was even it's even still possible when you start out there, it's actually can be even more powerful, right? Because then small
Yeah.
changes can make such a big difference. So for
Mhm.
example, I had 40 bus drivers. I'm working with a couple school systems, and I had 40 bus drivers go through my 12-week program. And for many of them, again, their diet and their lifestyle and their job, made it difficult for them. They were sedentary, they were sitting a lot at work, and then most people don't have extra income to buy lots of fruits and veggies and to, they're afraid their grocery bills are going to go up and maybe they don't have a lot of time to make food and they get a lot of fast food. So, we were really starting at a point that a lot of people, their lifestyle was really different than what I advocate, right? But with, first of all, knowledge. So understanding, giving people, empowering them with knowledge, the mindset, really like helping people see food and their bodies differently and feeling hopeful that, yes, this can actually work for me. Like this is something that is within my reach, which is not something I think most people, we don't learn that. We don't get that from our healthcare system, that this is possible for me. And I think that can be life-changing for people. And then of course the tools, but for many of those people, it changed their life after 12 weeks. And then they are now, the way that they feed their children is different. They've shared this help with their sisters and their brothers and their parents and their families. And it is possible. And it doesn't have to be restrictive. It doesn't have to be, it really can't be a diet, because if that's the mentality, then it's
Yeah.
never going to stick, because
No,
dieting and deprivation are just not sustainable, right?
no.
But when you make positive changes and you feel better and you start to enjoy the food that you're making and eating, and you start creating these healthy habits, I think it really is possible
Mhm.
to kind of feel better. And then it doesn't have to happen all at one time. It can happen just like with me, every day, every week, every month, I feel like I'm getting stronger and I'm doing more to support my health. And so I feel good about it. As I'm getting older, I feel like I'm getting stronger. And that's kind of the goal.
Hmm. I wonder out of those 40 bus drivers, how many have sustained some of those? Do you have any data on that? Like, is this something that when people are empowered with the knowledge, they make the changes stick for good?
I'm actually in touch with a lot of the people still, because what's been really nice about some of these programs that I've done is that the groups have really bonded, and that people have kind of gotten, yeah, I mean, they bonded and they've been really excited about it, and it has been transformational for so many of the people, and then they stay in touch. And so I'm not in touch with all of the bus drivers, but I know that a significant amount of them, it really has like really changed their life for the long term. And the first company that I worked with was a construction company, and that was about 5 years ago. And I know that still that cohort of people that did the program, I've heard they're still going on walks together and doing potlucks together. So I do think that, like, doing this type of change, like making these positive changes with others, can also be really powerful, right? Because
Yeah.
then you have this cohort and you are supporting each other. And then, I think it's really amazing.
Hmm. Well, that Framingham Heart study talked about willpower as being contagious, and they looked at the different groups of people, and when certain groups moved toward healthier habits, it was contagious with those that were in close proximity. So, absolutely, there is power in community, and so for those listening, if you don't have community, if you don't have people around you, even an online space where you can feel connected to other people wanting those same healthy habits, I think is really important. Looking at the steps to change, then, I'm just thinking of some of the things that you said, knowledge being like one of the top things, and just feeling empowered to make these smarter choices. What are some other steps to change that we can begin to implement if we want to move from a place of a sedentary lifestyle where our eating habits aren't great to the camp where we're feeling really good about what we're doing on a daily basis? Besides empowerment and knowledge, what are some other steps we can do to change?
Even just 10 minutes of physical activity, I tell people, can make a big difference, right? So I think a lot of times these lifestyle changes, they kind of work together, right? And so you can build momentum. So for me, I think the first thing that I changed was my sleep, right?
Mm,
And better sleep, and prioritizing my sleep then helped me feel more energetic and more able to work out. And then it helped me eat better, because when you
yeah.
sleep better, then you actually are going to crave healthier foods. And if you don't sleep well, then it makes it more difficult, right? So just picking one thing, whether it's what you're eating or whether it's your physical activity. And I always say 10 minutes, because we always talk about 30 to 60 minutes, 5 times a week. And that can feel overwhelming, right? And honestly, as a working mom, that's not always possible for me to do that. Like, I want to be healthy, but it's just not always possible for me to do that. But even if you can do 10 minutes, there was actually a study that came out a couple years ago that showed that people who exercise 10 minutes, it can actually decrease mortality. If we all increased our exercise, our physical activity by 10 minutes, it could decrease mortality in the US by, I think it was like hundreds of thousands of people. And then 20 minutes, it's even more. And then 30 minutes, it's obviously even more. Even 10 minutes, if you can
Yeah.
just start there, I think that that could really make a huge difference. Or if you want to start with sleep and trying to prioritize that, and then that can feed into something else. Or maybe you make a small goal with what you eat, that you want to eat half of your plate be fruits and vegetables for 5 dinners this week or something like that. One goal, one small goal, and then that can help build other habits as well.
Yeah, sometimes I think we have to remember that the minimal effective dose is a great starting place, right?
Mhm.
Because again, we hear on social, we see that we should be doing like a large amount of exercise, strength training, eating like high amounts of protein and fiber, and that just may not be an ideal starting point for a lot of people. So, minimal effective dose, folks, is still great and better than doing nothing for sure. A lot
Absolutely.
of people that are listening have children, but they also have grandkids, right? Because we're the menopausal woman, so we're into the grandkid phase now. Well, not personally, but I'm waiting. Um, but what's missing in how we teach the kids about food? What's missing there? What do we need to be speaking more about? Or maybe speaking less about? What kind of conversations should we be having with our children in terms of nutrition?
Well, I'm so happy you brought that up because this is something that's really important to me. So it all started that had been working with these school systems, and then I helping the teachers and the principals and the bus drivers. But then I've also been interested in learning more about the nutrition curriculum. And when I started delving into what we're teaching kids about food and health, I realized there's a big gap there that
Mhm.
really the way that we address these topics for kids has the ability to change the trajectory of their entire life.
Mm.
And we have this epidemic of chronic disease for adults, but we also have the same thing for kids. So 6 out of 10 adults has a chronic disease, but those numbers are actually rising in kids too. And
Mhm.
and a lot of the diseases that we never saw in kids previously, like even when I was in med school, the diseases that, we learn about type 2 diabetes, but that used to be called adult onset diabetes, right? Because
Right.
that was a condition that was in adults, but now,
But not now.
obviously very common in kids. High cholesterol, believe it or not, 1 in 5 kids now, children and adolescents, has some marker of abnormal cholesterol, whether it's high cholesterol or low HDL or a high LDL. 1 in 5 kids has abnormal cholesterol, high blood pressure. So again, these topics are so relevant and so important for kids, but I feel like the way that we are addressing it is really misguided. So everything, even for adults, I feel like the way that we talk about health again is very much equated to numbers on a scale. So weight, lose weight, childhood obesity, how do we help kids lose weight? And it's like, oh, we're even the American Academy of Pediatrics has even approved medications like GLP-1s or bariatric surgery for kids. But the reality is, if we're using those types of drastic interventions, what's I think we need to be doing first is teaching kids about nutrition and creating a positive mindset on how they see food and how they see their bodies. And so I think that is like essential. And that's what I've really done with my own kids in that I feel like teaching them how to read labels, teaching them about healthy fats, teaching them about different types of carbohydrates, teaching them about sugar and what that does in their body, and not in a scary way. Not
Hmm.
scaring kids, but empowering them because then kids are smart and they're capable of making good choices. Not to say that my kids are never going to eat candy or Doritos, but they make better choices because they have the nutrition knowledge and they also their mindset, the way they think about food in their bodies is is I think, very healthy the way that they
Hmm.
think about it. And so I think that is like the fundamental thing that we need to teach our kids. And if we can do that, then I think it can be so powerful. And so I mean, I just wrote a book series about this. Did I? I'm not sure if I told you that, but I just am in the process of publishing it. So I wrote a book because I was asked to speak in a classroom when I was, working with one of the school teachers I was working with. She said, can you talk to my class about this? This is so powerful. Do you have resources for kids? And I started thinking about, what I would talk to kids about. And I realized when I started looking at the resources available that there really aren't resources, I think, that help kids see food in this way that I could find. And
Hmm.
so that's why I decided to write a book.
Hmm.
And it's called The Wonder of What We Eat. And that I published last month, actually. But then I realized, well, that's the learning and mindset about food. So that's the head, but I really need the heart and the hands
Right.
because, again, like in order for adults to make meaningful life changes, I think you need both. You need all three. You need the head, you need the heart, the hands. So I wrote the book, and then I was like, well, I need the heart and the hands. So then I wrote a workbook. And that was actually in combination with my son. My 11-year-old son is the co-author.
Cute.
And that's
Aw.
the reinforcement to really take what kids learn, the learning and the mindset about nutrition, but then actually applying it and creating real life skills. Like, how do you read a label? Which product is actually healthier? Oh, these messages from the food industry, I can recognize now that these are tricking me. And actually, this is not a healthy food, and this is a better choice. And so really applying those skills, what you learn, to real life. And then the hands is a cookbook. And so the idea there is that, like, giving kids and families recipes that they can make that are kid friendly. I wrote
Mhm.
that with my daughter, who's 9. And so all the recipes in there are kid approved. And there's 4 recipes for chocolate chip cookies, for instance. And those are all, with just healthy substitutions
Yeah.
that I think you can make but feel better about. So I feel
Yeah.
like that's what I think is so important, is
Yeah.
exposing kids to this type of help early.
Here's the question. Do they get royalties?
Um, yeah, I mean, I guess we haven't even we haven't even really talked about that yet, but I guess
I'm just teasing.
for their college or
Yeah,
or
that's
what.
right. That's right. Um,
Um,
okay, so you know what I was just thinking as you're talking about that is that I've seen little TikToks or Instagram videos of children in kindergarten class in Japan and how they are prepping their food and going to the garden and picking the food, and this is what they're having. I know it's just probably a few schools or whatever, but it's incredible. And you're like, wow, if we had that here in North America, that would be unreal. I know it's resources and time and money and all of that, but it sounds like that's the mindset that you are wanting to introduce to our schools and to our communities, is that there is a way to healthy eating, and it starts with education and knowing what to do. And I think that's really great. I'll definitely are the books out already, or you said one was out?
so the book and the workbook were released October 15th, and the
Oh,
cookbook is
just.
coming out November 18th. So I don't know when this is
Oh, yeah.
airing.
Yeah, so we'll definitely put those links in the show notes below, folks. This was wonderful. Thank you so much for your insight. I think we've definitely learned just the importance of that prevention, lifestyle, medicine, and how crucial it is to empower yourself, but also, how much of a change it can make if we do the small things. And that was definitely what I took from today's talk with you. So thank you so much for being my guest today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Any parting words for our audience? Anything that you would think, okay, if you do nothing else, make sure you do this. What would that be?
I would just say it's never too late to make positive changes.
Mm.
And, again, I mentioned that 80% of our most common chronic diseases are preventable, but many are reversible. So there is hope, and
Hmm.
just starting small and making changes, it's pretty amazing what people can achieve. And so I think the first step is really believing that, and it's possible. And then for kids, again, I think having these conversations with your kids talking about food in a way that's not judgmental and that's not um, restrictive, but
Yeah,
talking about food as wonderful and powerful and a way that we can have more control over the rest of our lives. I mean, I think those discussions can really be so important and can really change lives. And so I would encourage everyone to do that.
absolutely. I love it. Where can people follow you on social media or how can they get in contact with you?
Absolutely. So I'm Head Heart Hands MD on Instagram and TikTok, and I'm on Facebook, Head Heart Hands Holistic Wellness and Weight Loss, and I'm just building up my presence on social media. So I would love a follow or a like.
All right, folks, check the description below because I will link all of that and make sure that you give Dr. Sharma a follow. Now, to all of you, go move daily in your fitness, your wellness, your nutrition, and I'll see you all in the next Move Daily Talks.